It's Wednesday, the 22nd of September 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know today in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
5 minutes for 5 stories. Let's get going. Number 1, the protests in Melbourne yesterday.
Crazy. Flares, really ugly scene. It all started a couple of weeks ago with a decision to only allow limited numbers of workers on site. Then on Monday, there was a violent protest outside the CFMEU headquarters. The marchers claimed that the union itself didn't do enough to stop the mandating of vaccines on work sites. That had come in last week. Keep in mind that more than 400 cases in the state are linked to the construction industry. Then on Monday night, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews shut down the sector. Clearly, he'd had enough. And yesterday it was a combination of construction workers and anti-vaxxers confronting the police and closing down the city. Now, the ACTU came out saying it was anti-vaxxers and far right-wing groups who had hijacked the march. It just wasn't a good look for anyone, and particularly not for the union movement. In contrast to all this, the New South Wales government yesterday said it was about to lift its 50% limit on construction sites in Greater Sydney. So that means if you work in construction and you're vaccinated, you can go back to work pretty much as normal from next Monday.
Big employer, very important sector because of the flow-on spending. Let's just hope we don't see a repeat of yesterday, today in Melbourne. Now, story number 2, got some COVID news and as well a bit of good news on vaccinations.
That's right, particularly if you're in New South Wales. That state is on track to hit 70% full vaccination on October 9, which would mean some reopening of the state, that first stage from the 11th of October. Yesterday, New South Wales recorded 1,022 cases and unfortunately 10 deaths. Local government areas in the north of the state went into lockdown. There are a bunch of areas near the Queensland border. And the other news in New South Wales is that the government will allow 3 children to gather in a home. This comes in the middle of the school holidays. Lots of happy parents about that one. Victoria recorded 603 cases yesterday, and the ACT recorded 16 new cases.
Yeah, my favourite part of the story is the fact that the US Food and Drug Administration has approved the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. And I noticed that Health Minister Greg Hunt here in Australia is now urging Pfizer to seek approval for the same thing here. So fingers crossed that comes pretty soon. Now, story number 3. The boss of ANZ, Shane Elliott, had a bit to say about the preparedness of small businesses when it comes to cyber security.
He called it a massive issue and said small and medium-sized businesses were at a higher risk than ever before. In fact, he said SME's preparedness was woeful. Now, phishing is still the main concern. Phishing is where you open an email you shouldn't and you infect your computer and often your work's systems. 90% of cyber attacks still occur because people open emails they shouldn't. The other big one that's coming to the fore a bit more is ransomware. We've already seen Nine Entertainment, JBS Meats, Total Holdings all over the last 12 months get hit by ransomware, whereby hackers demand a ransom to unlock systems. It's a real problem for the industry, and as Shane Elliott from ANZ said, it's an increasingly big problem for smaller businesses.
Now, our 4th story for today. Big corporate takeover this week. Canada's Brookfield Asset Management bidding $9.6 billion for energy group AusNet Services. But there's been a bit of drama. Very exciting. An Australian company has made a counter bid.
That's right. The pipeline company APA Group has come over the top with a $9.9 billion bid. We're talking about big money for infrastructure assets around the country at the moment. Now, the Canadian group Brookfield has been granted exclusive due diligence on AusNet for the next 8 weeks, but it will be impossible for the board to ignore the higher bid that came in from APA. APA's share price ended down nearly 5% as a result of its offer, but AusNet Services, its share price, it jumped 20% on Monday and then 10% yesterday. There is nothing like a bit of price tension to up a share price, and my, aren't those shareholders happy?
Yes, certainly are. Now, we're talking big money there, but our 5th story has the potential to dwarf all of them. The biggest global story at the moment is Evergrande. Tell me about that one.
Fundamentally, the reason financial markets at the moment, as we speak, are so nervous is because they fear that Evergrande, the Chinese property giant with $300 billion in liabilities, could collapse tomorrow. Evergrande is due to pay bondholders tomorrow and it might default, which would pretty much trigger a collapse in the Chinese real estate market. Now, that's not just bad for China. That's dreadful for the global economy, and it really does explain why there's so much nervousness around at the moment.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Michael.
There we go, 5 stories in 5 minutes. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of September. Make sure you followed Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. And if you're after any more information or you'd like something a little bit longer than 5 minutes, check out our longer podcast, funnily enough, also called Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fear and Greed Business Headlines. Have a great day.